Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Braga, and I'm recording this video for our Technology in Context, specifically this week's one that focuses on fair use. And I do apologize if I'm looking to the side a lot. I am using my laptop to read off of, and I'm recording on my tablet. And I will also say that I'm not sure if I'm going to go back into this afterwards and just chop up certain parts and take them out if I find that I'm stumbling over my words too much, just so I don't have to keep re-recording and only doing one take, because that could be a little bit of a headache for me. Anyway, to get into it now, the textbook defines fair use as the right to use portions of copyrighted material without the permission of the copyright holder for purposes such as review, criticism, or parody. This is right at the beginning of the reading. I even believe it's like the first sentence that you read as you start. Just overall, my own take on it, going into this reading, is that fair use seems very wishy-washy. It's not always easy to just be like, yeah, this is fair use, this is not, this is fair use, this is not, because it seems to be like copyright infringement and fair use is a wide spectrum and can be very, can be determined very often just in a court setting when that specific instance and situation of that is looked into. And it's very hard to set down rules for everyone to follow when, especially now, there's so many different types of media, whether it's like a movie, a show, a review on something, a book, I don't know, just everything. It's very hard to lay down specific rules for so many different things. Overall, as you're going back into the reading, as you're reading through, we are given sort of like a brief history over the idea of fair use media and how originally there were no restrictions at all, and and I think that was like very specifically for like the idea of copying and then redistributing other like recordings, sound recordings, records, probably audio, a lot of audio. We are given two very specific situations, such as the 1971 Sound Recording Act, and by the end of that it was prohibited, or the act of copying music was prohibited, and only for commercial use. So if it was then distributed for commercial use, that was stopped. You cannot do that. But I don't think they really ever touched on personal use of that. Situation we are talked about, or that we are shown, is the 1984 Betamax case, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But basically, Universal Studios had sued Sony Corporation of America, specifically because the Sony TVs were being used and consumers were propping up video cameras towards their Sony TVs and then recording movies and shows, specifically probably those of Universal Studios. But in the end of this, I believe that the reading states that the US Supreme Court sided with Sony. It explains the concept, or like the weird concept behind digital media, where many consumers are wrong to believe that once I buy it, I can use it as I like. And it's very convoluted now, especially with so many different ways to consume digital media and own digital media. It's very important to just look over a company's terms of service before making any rash decisions. After that, we are also expected to read the technology and context reading that goes along with this, which is just about film. Basically, as you go over it and you're reading it, it's just going into just film as a whole and how a lot of media now has a lot of digital additions to it, such as like CGI and just overall like morphing and like rendering certain things in that wasn't actually recorded in the moment and is later added through post. So this specific reading doesn't go into copyright and like fair use and whatnot, but it does tie in, especially at the end, because it brings up a few weird, mind-boggling questions about the idea of like, now since we have such great CGI technology, what if like movies had added in an actor or an actress who has since passed, and they create this sort of like CGI replica of Marilyn Monroe, I think was one of the examples they brought in, and is that okay? And if that happens, who then gets like the royalties from that, or who owns credit for that, or just weird, like obviously the person is no longer here, so how does that work? And then there's one specific quote that I wrote down that I thought was very true, especially in the terms of like copyright law, because it's ever changing. The reading says, new technologies present issues along with their benefits. So it's not always the good, it's not always the pros, it's sometimes the cons with it. To get into the try it questions, the first one asks us to define the 4 factors in section 107 of the US copyright law that is specifically about fair use. So the very first section is very clear to be about when it says like the purpose of the material, it's very much like the result of the material, I feel like. Basically, is it being used for like a commercial profit? Is it being used for more of a non-profit purpose and in order to learn from it or something of the sort? Now, the second one seems a little bit more convoluted. It just says the nature of the copyrighted work. This part specifically, I find, may be more about how transformative the material is in and of itself. Is it used creatively, or is it just basically like you're copying and pasting someone else's work and using that? The third one, so basically how much of the copyrighted material was used into the new media. And then the last one, so basically an author sells a book about a certain subject, and Netflix later decides to make a Netflix original documentary of a very similar subject or of the same subject, and refers to that book a lot for the information in that documentary. Would that be considered fair use? Because I guess one of the aspects you can look into is, well, if Netflix is using this information as a documentary, is that going to affect the sales of, say, like the published book? The second question, to move on, is about a specific case where a book called The Grateful Dead, The Illustrated Trip, had used 7 images from that were copyrighted and owned by an organization called the Bill Graham Archives, or BGA for short, had sued the publisher of this book for using those images. And later it was like decided that this was indeed fair use. So overall, the book's usage of these 7 images were different from the use of like the original posters and the event tickets and the art on that. Secondly, it was decided by the court that the images used within the book were more so used as creative artwork and not as to sort of copy and paste the posters or the tickets. It was also realized that the images used were like reduced in size and then scattered among other images that weren't owned by BGA. And at last, the court had realized that before this had even gone to court and before the publisher was even sued, the publisher had worked to license these images to use, and BGA wanted no part in it. Obviously, the images were still used after this had fallen through, and I believe the court had used that as a case to be like, you could have avoided this altogether. To move on to the third question, I believe it asked us to find transformative work through YouTube. It was very hard to find a specific instance for this, or like a specific video that shows this to then link to an original work. And I say this because like there's so much on YouTube that you could find anything for a certain movie or TV show or even a book review or criticism, where often if it's a book, passages will be shown or read off, or if it's a movie or TV show, certain scenes can often be shown. Just split moments of the scene to then be used to talk about, which then you could link the original work that was reviewed. I feel like also a lot of videos centered around music and audio can also be used, whether it's like a popular song and someone's doing a cover of it, or if someone had somewhat created their own original audio work and had used a popular song as a sample in the background of that. I believe we had to look into the Amazon Instant Video usage rules. Overall, are you allowed to stream more than 1 video at a time? Yes, you can stream up to 3 videos at the same time using the same Amazon Video account. Are you allowed to stream the same video to 2 devices at the same time? Yes, you are allowed to stream the same video to 2 different devices at the same time through the same account, but no more than that, only those 2 devices with the same video. Are you allowed to stream videos to any digital device? Probably not every single digital device. For the most part, more commonly used devices that are typically known, iPads, tablets, Kindle Fires, phones, TVs that have access to the internet, Rokus, I don't know, anything like that should probably be able to, but if you do have any questions about compatibility on those usage rules, Amazon does list or does state that they do have a compatibility list on all of their Amazon websites, all their regional Amazon websites. They did state that device compatibility may vary by location. Are you allowed to save rented content to a handheld device so that you can watch it after the viewing period has ended? And no, not really. If you rent something through Amazon Video, you won't have it all the time. You will have it, I believe it said, if you do not stream it or download it, and you did purchase it, you have up to 30 days to stream or download it. And once you do begin the stream or begin the download for the media, I believe you have 48 hours, so 2 days, to finish it before your access to it is revoked and taken away. So the fifth try it question about like YouTube, and if you had media through iTunes, can you still post it and would it be okay through YouTube? So to find this answer, you have to go to the What is Copyright Google support page. Copyright myths or something like that. So under myth 4, you can actually find one that's called that's like listed as a myth. You can use content you purchased on iTunes as CD or DVD. And there, right under, if you click into that, although you purchase certain content, you still don't have the rights to upload it to YouTube, even if you just, in the description, credit whoever was the original copyright holder. If you do that, you may still be violating copyright law. So to get into the what do you think questions, I don't know what to add to the fair use doctrine to make it fairer. I feel like it's very, like that it needs guidelines. It definitely does, and I don't think anything of that. But it's very hard to find the the balance between what is too strict and what is not. But I feel like I can't come up with a good answer for that on my own. It's very hard to set up rules to have it stay case by case though, and I understand that. I understand both sides of this, because then most times this may waste both time and money in courts. I feel like it's very hard to find the balance between what is enough for this law and what is too much. So to go into the second question, I believe it was about iTunes, and it was very hard to stick to one reasoning behind this, and I only say this because I believe now Apple is phasing out their old iTunes business model and old iTunes program. And I think now they are switching their focus to Apple Music, which is more of like a streaming media. Through the old iTunes store, not the streaming service, but the old store where you would purchase songs individually for like $1 or $2, or pay more for a full album or something of the like. I mean, I understand why consumers would assume that they had more rights than they did with this media if they had put so much money into each individual song and each individual album to build up their playlist and library to listen elsewhere. But then if you think about it too, especially back when iTunes was the major thing, it wasn't as easy to listen to your music. You either needed an Apple branded device, such as like an iPod, an iPad, iPhone when those started, or if you did have a computer where you were able to listen to these through, you could download the iTunes specific program to do that. Nowadays, and I believe you're not even able to really access an iTunes program anymore. If you need to use iTunes for anything, I think you still go through, at least on a Mac, you go through the Apple Music program or through your files, something like that. But Apple has shifted their focus into more of a streaming business model for Apple Music. Now, I don't use Apple Music myself because I use Spotify, but through that, I'm going to assume it's really similar with the whole streaming issues, where you're not really paying like you were before for each individual song or album or something of the like, but instead you are paying a monthly or yearly subscription to have the right to stream this music. And if that's the case, their guidelines seem very reasonable, that you're not really able to do anything with the media other than listen to it on when you have a chance and on your devices and whatnot. Because in this case, you're not really paying to own any of the media. You're just paying for a right to use the service that gives you access to this media. Now, to move on to the last question, it was about a situation if someone was charged with infringement, even if what they had done was fair use. Like overall, especially in the modern day, It's very easy to hear about this sort of situation just in general, especially if you tend to be one who is on like YouTube or Twitch, where this tends to come up a lot. And even if you're not a person who is on these platforms and posting content of public consumption, even if you're just one who tends to consume the media instead of doing anything else with it, I feel as if you definitely hear about these situations a lot more than maybe you could have years ago. Either using another YouTube creator's content or using like a TV show's content in their videos and then getting flagged for it, regardless if it is actual infringement or if it was transformative fair use. YouTube, the company as a whole, has had a lot of criticism because of this, because of their sort of iffy content striking system for copyright infringement. But I believe that there are often YouTube creators that are flagging other creators' videos regardless of fair use through this iffy content striking system. It definitely feels as though the whole idea behind copyright infringement, and fair use has often been twisted and mistreated. Not that it's so much being twisted, but that it's not being understood as well as it could be. Now we're starting to hear a lot of that through TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, even though it's kind of not as popular anymore. Even like areas where it's just not so much long form content, but it's just really short clips. Although a copyright law is necessary, especially in this day and age, it is very hard to pinpoint when the law can be considered too strict, if additions are made to it, or too loose if nothing changes.